Hello, everybody. Welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz Dan. As ever, I am the IT Geek. I am joined by my good friend Simon again. Hi, Simon.
Hey Shabazz, how are we?
Good, thank you, mate. How about you?
Yeah, good. Looking forward to this podcast.
Yeah. So as you've probably seen in my content, Simon, each series I always have a podcast on that particular topic with a special guest. Obviously, we're doing this together, so we've got we're going to do the podcast together with a special guest. So,
Yeah,
without further ado, I'd like to introduce that person. Welcome to Chris Pottrell. Hi, Chris.
Hi guys, how are we going?
good, thanks. How are you, Chris?
Yeah, very well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for making the time. It's great to have you on. Obviously, we've been doing this series about Azure Virtual Desktop, and I understand that you're quite into the VDI and the Azure Virtual Desktop scene as well. So, for those who are watching that might not know who you are, do you mind just doing a quick introduction for yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chris Pottrell. I'm the managing director of an MSP based down in Bristol. We've been going for about 10 years. So the company's called Nebula IT. We've always had a real cloud focus, and the last 12 months especially. I was about to say Windows Virtual Desktop. Then AVD has been a massive driver for us. So it's a big growth area for us. So I've been involved with it through many different departments: the sales side of it, the account management side of it, the technical rollout, and the training. So it's been a kind of a real fun project for me to be involved in.
Excellent. So, I mean, did you start using, obviously back in March, I suppose, when it really came to the forefront with the pandemic starting? Have you kind of had since it first started, since the PowerShell, I call it the PowerShell days, since you had to implement PowerShell, is that when you started with it?
Yeah, so we enjoyed it when it was non-ARM, all PowerShell, and we had some host pools. We were really testing internally. We had a couple of dev clients that were using it to test some theories, see if it was a concept that could work. The biggest thing for us was actually, it was just as it went portal driven. We took on a client that was charity based, about 100 staff, and it was during very early days of COVID where you really couldn't get to site, and their whole entire kind of internal IT infrastructure failed, with not much in the way of backups. So it's kind of the simplest, most straightforward project we could do as quickly as possible to put their infrastructure in the same environment where their data lived, because we were able to lift and shift the data into SharePoint relatively easily. Rolling out WVD from there was relatively easy, and it meant we could do all of this without visiting site. So we had 3 engineers, and we did it in about 2 days.
So is that use case where it was the IT administration part that you kind of migrated, or was it actually the whole sort of organization infrastructure?
Every single thing. AD was shifted, AD Connect was shifted, all the password management devices would roll into Endpoint Manager, or Intune as it was known then. All the workloads and application servers were moved into Azure as VMs.
Right.
And then the final piece of that puzzle was spinning up host pools and allowing the users to then reconnect. Part of that, there was even some legacy apps where Microsoft were involved to really kind of the final piece of the puzzle to make sure everything worked. So those guys were involved. And it was, I would love to, if we did it again, I would love to plan that project rather than just kind of, it was a very knee-jerk project that just had to happen.
Yeah.
And there was no way we could get that many engineers down to that estate in that short period of time under those circumstances. So it was a dream. The feedback from the client was very, very good, and they've grown and grown and grown. And they're up to about 10, 11 VMs in their host pools now, and it continues to grow.
But I suppose that's the thing about Azure Virtual Desktop, because of the timing of when it was released. It was almost like inadvertently, really, the COVID pandemic almost increased its usability, and that sort of use case which you mentioned there is very extreme, but unfortunately because of the situation that organizations are in, and it was similar experiences what I had, a lot of businesses just because of lockdown couldn't get staff into the office, so they had a choice. They either go under and don't serve their customers, or they provision something like what was WVD at the time.
Yeah, yeah. It's been interesting to see how quickly it moved. It was incredible. In the first 3 months of COVID, and you can see Microsoft really deciding to put their weight behind Teams and WVD. So it's interesting to see how the relationship between Teams and WVD have gone the same way. The amount of work they're pumping into Teams, the desktop application to connect to WVD and WVD itself, it is a full-time job keeping up with the development teams and the roadmaps. Every day it's something new. So, we've had instances where we've had clients that have, really enjoying the WVD, and they're actually coming to us with features and saying, "Oh, I've heard about this. Someone else I know is using it." So it's proving that it's increasing in popularity for sure.
Definitely, but I think now that organisations have a luxury of taking their time with it rather than jumping straight in. Because again, similar experiences I had where, like you said, clients didn't have much choice. It was either go under or actually just go full throttle and go for it. And I think it's worked out for a lot of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about your own experience of VDI, whether it being on-premise or in the cloud?
I'll have some terrible flashbacks of bad memories of my background's always been technical. So, first IT job, we had remote desktop clusters, we had Citrix clusters, VMware. We've always had remote desktop. We've always had the pain that it can cause sometimes with, effectively shoehorning Office onto a server and just pretending that it's working fine. We've even had the kind of stopgap gap in between where we had remote desktop services in Azure. So we've done some migration projects for, where the customer's just in the middle. They can see the benefits of a hosted cloud environment, but the real benefits around cost saving, which is a big driver for everybody, just weren't there yet. So I've been lucky enough to be kind of involved from, quite early days, 10, 15 years ago, where it was very manual, it was very difficult to maintain. There was no overall management interfaces. It was very hard to deal with profiles. There was no app attached. There was no FS Logics, which has been huge. It just seems like, everything in the last 12 months has really fallen into place, and it just because it's a real polished product now, I feel. It wasn't VDI around Citrix and VMware were very difficult for us to manage and maintain, me personally anyway. But the guys coming through now in our support desk, they've taken to it really well. The training from the Microsoft guys, the internal training, our partners, it's been a lot easier. I am very jealous of those guys that they can, control this whole 200 user estate from an Azure portal and get the insights from everything. If we were changing someone's background or something like that, or it was GPOs all over the place, it becomes a real nightmare. And we're managing this from an MSP perspective, so we don't have a lot of time to be focusing on a single WVD estate. We've got multiples, so when Azure Lighthouse came in and all these little tools were introduced, it became a lot easier for us to do. But certainly compared to years ago, it's it's a lot easier now for sure.
It's funny you should say, you mentioned a few things there around the user profiles and FS Logics. In one of the episodes that me and Simon do, we end up having a conversation around that. We're like, oh God, do you remember roaming profiles on RDS and what a nightmare they were?
The pain.
Yeah.
And FS Logics are just, I know it's not a Microsoft product, but again, it's coming to the limelight more with AVD, and it has revolutionized the containerization of the profiles, and the login times it's leaps and bounds better than what they were on premises, like with RDS, even VMware and Citrix, which is they're both supported with FS Logics as well. I think it's helped them improve as well. But definitely love FS Logics and that user profile piece.
I think that was the biggest kicker for us to get RDS off of Azure and into AVD. There was cost implications, there are time implications, there's user interruption, we have to retrain, all that sort of stuff. FS Logics, when you could demonstrate within 20 minutes, how much faster with the same profiles, with the same applications it is, and when you can really dig into, putting applications in containers and mounting different things and managing the whole solution in a different way, it's an absolute win-win.
Yeah, 100%. And also you mentioned like RDS in Azure. That still requires quite a bit of management overhead because you've still got the security element of it, the networking element of it. And with when I'm kind of talking to clients around AVD, that's kind of what I focus on. When your management overhead is just halved because there's a lot of that. You don't have to worry about the web access, the gateway, the broker. All that's gone. It's all Microsoft problem.
The cloud licensing is also a big one. Making sure that licensing service stayed up and stayed working. The broker service, like you say, it's all coming back to me. The pain and suffering of
sorry, I didn't mean to
being up in the middle of the night, making sure. But there's just you're not spinning as many plates when you're maintaining a system for 100 and 200 users. When there's a single point of failure, which is a broker, because if you've already got 6 or 7 VMs running 24/7, it's already expensive. So trying to get redundancy in those other layers in there it's tricky.
Yeah, very much so. And we've touched on AVD or WVD, whatever we're going to remember to call it, and we've touched on what your own experience is with VDI in general. How have you found the evolution of it then? So going from that old school RDS Citrix on premises to what it is now, how have you found that transitioning, not just from a technical perspective, but also from a client perspective? How have they taken to that evolution?
I think it wouldn't have been as fast paced. Obviously, COVID has been a massive driver for that, unfortunately. But it is, the more we introduce it into customers, the easier it becomes. It's a bit of a snowball effect that we can demonstrate use case. There isn't a single environment that we've rolled out that's the same. They're all different, but they're all managed and maintained in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Some might just slightly be different, but it's fun because of the speed in which it evolves. It's not like RDS where we're waiting for new versions of Windows and new versions of Office, and that's basically all that ever happened.
Yeah.
It's, we've got Office and Teams upgrading, updating on the fly. We've got endpoint, VMs in AVD now enrolled into Endpoint Manager, and you've got so much stuff you can do with it. And the guys, the team here, really, really enjoy managing it, maintaining it, and rolling it out. The whole life cycle of that project, doesn't matter where you're coming from, is a lot easier to move into WVD than it was to move into an RDS environment, for sure.
I mean, Simon, you might have quite a bit of experience, obviously, with RDS and now supporting that, but the whole element of going from like a server-based OS in RDS and Citrix to now Windows 10 is also quite a big shift for customers and clients and end users. And I think that's helped with it not being a server OS. You can do all this sort of desktop. There's that feature, isn't there, where you can try and make it
classic shell.
That's
classic,
it, yeah. It's I think having it Windows 10 is a big thing as well. And again, you might have seen like VMware and Citrix are trying to integrate with AVD as well because of that multi-session, Windows 10 multi-session. So it is quite interesting.
I mean, the fact they're in the Windows 10, we've actually had problems with that where people didn't realize they were connected to WVD because they weren't used to seeing no difference in the environment when they're coming from a Windows 10 Pro desktop into a Windows 10 virtual desktop. That was a bit of that took a bit of training and raising awareness on, it's going to look and feel exactly the same, but it's going to be completely different because you're connecting to what you're already using effectively.
Yeah.
So it did kind of touch on that evolution. I think it helped the bring your own device flourish. We've seen a lot of that with the implications on shortages of hardware. We were using it as a way of addressing that, and just saying, look, okay, well, let's be aware of the devices your staff are using, but as long as what they're connecting to is ring-fenced, secure, and safe, then for the short term, we can use WVD as a temporary solution. It can be a throwaway solution in 9 months, 10 months, 12 months when you're back in the office. We don't have to use this, but a lot of them do stay put, and they just realize there's a way of saving on hardware overheads the further they go into it.
Yeah, and again, it's hardware's a massive cost, and it's not just the one-off cost. It's having to refresh it every potentially 3 to 4 years, and the time and effort that goes into that But also, the I love is the image management within AVD, and the fact that while the users are actually working and logged in, you can actually upgrade the session host to a new version of Windows 10.
Yeah.
And then when they log off and log back on, boom, they've got the latest version. And I remember nightmares of like I said, updating laptops and just updating laptops and stuff like that. It can cause nightmares. And again, it saves a lot of time, and time is money, isn't it? So again, it's just another feature of it that I think has helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, trying to shoehorn an upgraded version of Office onto 5 remote desktop servers that are all, they're all exactly the same, but they all behave very differently.
Yeah.
So you're having flashbacks now, so
yeah, definitely.
Just being able to manage that, we call it the golden goose image, where we've just got signature managers rolled out. We've got some Nebula versions of images that we might push out, and then client-specific ones, and just being able to roll back or roll forward. We have maintenance windows. It's never an issue. It's just works.
So, are you seeing a transition period? I know, like COVID, as we've said, has been like a massive driver for this. Do you think that this will be something that clients or other organizations might be looking to move to as like a long-term solution as the migration to like cloud-based, or would you see it like a hybrid to replace some funky RDS servers or farms that just don't work?
Yeah, I mean that's the key replacement. It does replace RDS, but we're seeing there's a lot more people using it for a lot of other solutions. It's not just for giving 150 people a virtual desktop. It's they might have a specific role that 5 people do for a small amount of time. And for a week per month, they need the ability to have these people to log in, do this work, and then shut the system down. But it's there and ready to go the next time they need it. It definitely is the next logical step for anyone using RDS, whether it's on site or whether it's in Azure or any other cloud environment. So much so we have no RDS boxes left. We made it quite a high priority goal for us within 12 months to, I've stopped tweeting about it actually. So, if you've noticed my hatred for RDS, so I just like yours when you're suffering with it. The feedback, the management, everything, it is and should be the next logical step for anyone that's in RDS. And if there's snagging points where you think this might not work, it's been good to see how much Microsoft are getting involved to say, well, if your app works locally, we can get that working in our virtual desktop environments, which is good to see.
I've seen some very use cases I wouldn't think it would be kind of applicable to, but there's 2 use cases recently that have come up where you've actually touched on one of them, the sort of contractor use case. So rather than, you have a contractor that comes in, it's going to be working for a short amount of time. Again, rather than having to buy him a laptop, build it, and all that time and money, you just roll up another session host if you want to give him a personal desktop, or just give him permission to an existing host pool, a pooled one. And again, it's saving time and effort. And the other one which is a bit of a strange one, is the BCP. So again, COVID was a really interesting example. A couple of clients I was speaking to, they're like, what if we have another COVID where we can't come into the office? They have people that have they have desktops, and they have people that have to come into the office to get to work. What if we have another COVID where they can't come in? We need a plan, like a business continuity plan, where we can quickly roll up an environment. And it's WVD that we've looked at for an answer, and it's it's for BCP. I mean, have you had any experience with it being like a BCP plan for customers?
Certainly now, yeah. I mean, anyone where we've rolled that WVD is like their core solution, which is is now the framework, the core infrastructure. They connect to it. That is the heart and soul of it. There are continuity things around that where we're looking at. WVD is redundant in the sense the layers that Microsoft look after, but what can we do around FS Logics, the host pool management, rolling back of images, where it is, what geo are we putting it in, where are we hosting it? We've got an English accountancy firm with South African staff doing American tax returns. That's how it's been able to loop together for us. And the original solution was the customer was about to ship laptops out to South Africa with the software on with VPNs, and we're going, this is just another host pool. You don't need to ship hardware to them. They can just go. We can have this kind of rolled out in a day or so. And it's quite interesting how I keep going back to kind of RDS, but once you've got the solution established, the difference in the support required to maintain that and keep it running day in, day out, you're almost proactively checking it every day to make sure it is still running as it should be. Because it is, it's low touch. As soon as it's going, there's not much you have to do to it outside maintenance windows.
I mean, we've touched on sort of Azure Virtual Desktop and all the benefits it's brought, but what do you feel are the benefits of a service like Azure Virtual Desktop over its competitors? So again, Citrix, VMware, where do you feel it kind of it's a benefit over those sort of services?
Me personally, it's the partner network. It's the people involved in that community, the Microsoft community. You got yourself, Simon. There's Christian. Some of the work he's been doing on that WVD side, it's we've used that as a key training resource over and above like core Microsoft documentation because it's real use case. You don't really get that anywhere else. Everyone's pulling in the same way. You might be up against another MSP, but we can all talk about WVD and its benefits and trials and tribulations with it. We've never seen that in VMware, for example, Citrix environments. It's quite closed book, closed forum, closed communities. Whereas if you've had a win with WVD, you shout about it and people learn from it. In the same way that there's people that are going to be struggling, and the community is there to help. We're constantly learning. We try and encouraged our guys to start blogging and talking about what they're doing because we're not doing the same thing day in, day out. And it is really fun for Simon might vouch for this, for an MSP to be involved in because it is new, it is different. But yeah, it's the fact that Microsoft has worked so hard on building that community with the events as well. That's how I usually meet Simon, is Ignite and Inspire events. We'll meet up and those events where you can be on the cutting edge of it as well. All the new features, it's public preview, it's private preview. If you really want to get involved in it, you can be 6 months ahead. So it's really exciting. It's really fun.
It's again what you've touched on there, that community aspect, and also the feedback, the way Microsoft take feedback, and the fact that they want to know what you don't like about it and what you do like, and you can request features. Do you know what I mean? Again, my little experience with other VDI vendors like VMware and Citrix, it's not like that. You request something, it'll just get lost in a sort of a black hole.
Documentation spiral.
Exactly. I mean, the other thing, again, this is one thing I try and when I'm differentiating between the sort of vendors, I suppose, is it's the integration with the rest of the ecosystem in Microsoft Cloud. So Endpoint Manager, Azure Monitoring, Azure Security Center, automation, all that sort of stuff, which isn't technically Azure Virtual Desktop, but it's that Azure ecosystem which just brings it to a whole different level compared to your Citrixes, your VMwares. That's kind of what I see.
For sure. I remember when the SKUs changed to Microsoft 365, and then you started seeing Windows 10 included. You can never really understand what are the benefits of having a Windows 10 license included in an Office 365 license. And it took a couple of months before it became clear. I remember asking someone on a Microsoft stand up was it Ignite, I think, and they weren't being sheepish about it, but you can tell that there was a big plan around that. And like I say, we generally, it's interesting you say that, we treat it like an extension of Microsoft 365's licensing. It's, people focus on the 365 portals, the Exchange, the SharePoints, and this is just another thing of that. It's not a whole big standalone environment like Citrix. It's very much just seamless. You can just move in and out of it as long as you've got that license, that key to go with you. It's really easy.
It's all around that modern workplace, I think they call it, don't they?
Yeah.
That's what they've branded it as. And I think that what you said is right. Is just, I think the way they've wanted it to be is an extension of the Microsoft 365 family rather than an entity of its own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which brings us nicely onto, off the back end of licensing, is to like cost savings and analysis and stuff. Are you using any clever things inside of Azure to sort of try to keep the cost down for host pools? Are you shutting them down or any automation stuff?
We've got some clever scripting that we amended and adapted early doors that, we've gone through a theory. It's very much not broke. Let's not touch it. There are some new things like runbooks, web flows, all these sort of things that can do clever stuff. That if you get that right, there is a massive cost saving. It's not, licensing and the fact you're taking your license with you is one. But if you can get those VMs running for 20% of the time or 50% of the time, there's a huge cost saving. When you've got 200 people and 60% of that workforce are all logging in at 8 o'clock, you have to start thinking about things like peak hours, making sure VMs are ready for them to sign in. We were doing that before the features like power on connect came in, so we very much had to make sure those VMs were up and ready, because these users there was just this bottleneck happening at 8:59 in the morning or 9:01, depending on what time they got in. Once you kind of fine tune it and you can smooth it out, it takes a couple of weeks of really looking into it. You'll see that Azure spend and the cost saving just nosedive. It is really interesting when you're running, a very similar spec VM. The only difference is the OS. The cost saving is it's massive.
But it's, again, you've got the tools within the services within Azure to do that. You can monitor performance and the high peak usage, low peak usage, and again, just build your automation around that, really, can't you? It
takes, I think once you've done a couple and you really get your head around where the problems can lie, you might underspec servers and then suddenly you're having to overspec on the next release, or do you start big and do you downsize? There is that. It's quite a difficult calculation. I can understand when Microsoft struggle with it, and it's probably why the biggest feedback they get is I'm struggling to cost this accurately, because you can have 10 VMs at half spec or 5 VMs at a larger spec. Which one do you go for? Trial and error. We can kind of now, I think after a year and all these different use cases, we've kind of got our heads around it. We can quite accurately know which way we should be going. But if you get that right with the power on, and that's the features we always keep an eye on the roadmap, because if someone has written something bespoke and it has got good feedback, you can pretty much guarantee that will be in the next general release. Powering on and powering off. It's fine if you've got a pool of 20 VMs and you want to turn 2/3 of them off, but if you've got a pool with one VM, how are you turning that off and on? There's challenges with the smaller ones. I think Microsoft have addressed that. They know it's not just going to be 100+ user bases that are going to be using this system. It's going to be the one-man band, the 5-man bands, the people that just need something quickly.
No, exactly. I mean, so far it's all been very positive around Azure Virtual Desktop, but like any service, there are drawbacks to it, and I'm not going to sit here and say that it's the perfect service. In your experience with Azure Virtual Desktop, what's been some of the biggest drawbacks in your experience, in your opinion, with that sort of service?
I think I might have like a bit of taste in my mouth from the early days. So image management for us was quite overcomplicated in the beginning. There wasn't much support for single VM host pools. There wasn't much flexibility about how you could update those. If you were really on a budget, and we've seen where they've had a host pool with a application database installed on the host pool VM, and it has all come down to a cost saving exercise. Like what support around that is there? If we can't break that VM out, how are we going to keep it updated? That side, it kind of has been addressed now, I think, with Endpoint, and there's cleverer ways of keeping those machines up to date. I think my biggest frustration was around costings. It was, that cost calculator is, you need a degree in physics to be able to actually work that thing out. But if you get your head around it and you see the alternatives at the very, I don't know if Simon's ever seen this, is a really complicated spreadsheet that Microsoft reps have. You'd rather use the calculator online. You can then understand why they use 100 users as the lowest benchmark, and all that sort of stuff. That has always been a bit of an issue, because you've got to predict the on and off state of a VM. So you're trying to price, and this is me from a selfish director, account manager kind of perspective, not techie. I would keep them all on forever if I was still technical day in, day out. But being able to predict where those loads are based on the timings, but then you have to calculate the storage, the in and out movement of data. How are you going to back these app servers? How are you going to do your AD? You're going to have a VM with AD running on it. You're going to do, Active Directory domain services. Just keeping up with all the acronyms again is like a full-time job, and then they'll throw a curveball and change Office to Microsoft and Windows to Azure virtual desktop. So keeping up on those sort of things. But yeah, I don't have many gripes, but I think from a non-technical perspective, I think it is mainly around the pricing of it. It's hard. It's very difficult.
This is going to sound counterintuitive probably, but one of my gripes, as you just touched on it, is the amount of updates and the speed of updates that you get. Like every day something's new, and it's like, wow, I'm like 3 weeks behind. I wish it'd slow down a bit, if I'm honest with you.
We kind of, I think we agree with that. They had this kind of, it felt like they were trying to force Teams to be more like Zoom. That was a big thing for us. A customer might read that Teams can do 50 plus people on a screen. Great. It can in WVD, not yet. Also, why would you want to do that through WVD? But the majority of the updates were actually coming from keeping the remote desktop app up to date. We had some estates where that was quite difficult to do because either permissions were an issue, the devices were unmanaged, it was bring your own device, that sort of stuff. So there's factors outside of Azure Virtual Desktop that impact the performance of Virtual Desktop. And they can be quite hard to distinguish to a client if there's issues happening. You have to go back to square one and say, well, how are you connecting? Is it iOS? Is it Mac OS?
Yeah.
It's, there's the HTML5, there's 15 different ways that you can log into this. We've got to narrow it down a bit.
No, that's interesting. So off the back of updates and them coming out thick and fast, is there anything on the roadmap for Azure Virtual Desktop that you're looking forward to?
We have just actually got our teeth stuck into Power on Connect, which I think is going to be a bit of a game changer for especially the small environments. So the larger ones are always leaving one VM on so we can detect load and turn others on. But if you've got someone that's having to spend £350 a month on a relatively good VM, but there's only 2 people, you need that. Machine turning off isn't an issue. Getting it back on quickly is another. Yeah. And being able to connect to that, and if the users understand that, say this machine will be powered on within 3 minutes, perfect. And now they've very quickly they put that from private to public. Now it's all in the portal. It was only the private pools first, but now it's you've got more host pools together, more VMs. Sorry. Being able to introduce that feature's really, really going to help us, I think. I've been waiting for that one for a while. I'd like to think that was down to my constant moaning, but
we do take feedback. I think from my perspective, I'm looking for them to getting the single sign-on sorted, so it's not dependent on ADFS, because it's not that's almost like going backwards a step. Like, oh yeah, we support single sign-on is supported, but then in fine print only through ADFS. I remember getting really excited and pushing it out quite quickly with our internal use credits with Azure, going, this is easy. Well, we've got Azure AD, and we've got WVD. Why is this not working? Why do I need a middleman? Why do I need AD with AD Connect? And why can't I just go straight into Azure AD and use that? And the documentation then wasn't really clear. It was kind of like a one-liner in a very obvious yellow box that your eyes kind of glazed past, and you've raced ahead because you're just really excited by it. But when the bit that takes the longest, actually, funny enough, the bit that takes the longest in a WVD rollout is enabling Azure Active Directory domain services and leaving that for a couple of hours to provision. Once you've got the host pools.
Been there, we know.
Yeah. So we've got like a hybrid. I think I personally prefer having the AD sync the attributes and doing it that way. But yeah, if we're trying to keep it neat and compact, and it's a bit of a throwaway solution for a temporary project, then yeah, we'll go down the services route.
And I think, I don't know, I'm not seeing this on the roadmap yet or not, but I think once Azure AD join is in general availability, that after that, I reckon the single sign will come. And that again, that's the other thing I'm looking forward to, because I think once Azure AD join is kind of working and generally available, a lot more of the endpoint management features, I think, because if you think about it, Azure AD is like your backbone of the whole service in Azure. Every service uses it.
Yeah.
No matter if you're deploying applications, if you're using the infrastructure, the PaaS, SaaS, whatever solution you're using, it all depends on Azure AD. So as soon as that Azure AD joins there, that's when I think the features are going to become a lot more rich, and stuff like single sign-on through Azure AD, and it will all come into the front then.
Yeah, it's interesting that with the Defender for Endpoint, being able to use that, we harnessed that inside Azure Sentinel. So we use that as a way of just feeding more information back in. So you got, probably something we haven't really touched on, the security benefits of it. We had these IT managers that were sitting in an office and they could literally see an estate of 50, 100 machines. Then COVID happened and these endpoints are now dotted around. He's supporting 100 offices, 100 endpoints. Doesn't need to worry, as long as his ecosystem is wrapped up. And Sentinel's helped us massively there, having that single pane of glass. Again, with Lighthouse, we can, feed that information in. You get a real-time position on, the user identity security, but then also the device security and the endpoints and all the WVD boxes.
Just goes back to what you said. What makes AVD is the fact that you can integrate it with so much of that ecosystem of Azure.
Yeah,
we've probably talked more about non-AVD tools than we have because it's what makes it such a good product though over its competitors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'll enable one thing and then 3 weeks later you go, oh, this is new. Okay, there's another maintenance, so let's keep going. It's more and more features are released, and then something else becomes available within their M365 SKU, which changes AVD, and we can do more things that way. So yeah, it's ever evolving, and like I say, it's very difficult to keep up. That's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, we've touched on what you're looking forward to in the roadmap. Is there anything that is not on the roadmap in AVD that you would like Microsoft to integrate into the service? Is there anything you feel is missing that they may not have thought, haven't touched on?
The integration into Endpoint Manager was my biggest one, but like I say, there's been a lot of work there. Off the top of my head, it's very hard. There's so many features there.
It's only personalized host pools at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I'm hoping again, pooled is on the way, but that's something I was hoping to see as well.
I'm sure if it was, I was rolling out a new WVD environment, like I said, I think, but there's not really anything I think is missing from the roadmap. That roadmap is growing and growing and growing, especially with people like Christian behind it, kind of pushing features. I don't think the provisioning process for any WVD thing we've done has ever been the same. The GUI, the interface will change. There's a new option that suddenly we have to research. There's a new radio button in there about Azure AD Connect and AD Connect and how we're syncing FS logics. But it is becoming easier and easier and easier. So I can't think any off the top of my head that's really missing.
Have you used Nerdio at all?
We have had so we partner with a company called West Coast, who are quite heavily involved with everything we do. And they are, quite keen for us to get on board on the Nerdio platform. So we've got some scheduled demos, because we heard some very good things about the management, the provisioning, the maintenance from that side.
Yeah.
Like one more layer up that allows greater visibility. So I think that's going to be on our personal roadmap for sure.
Yeah, I obviously had the demo with Baz. He demoed it for my company as well. But also I think you can get like a 30-day trial. And it's such a, again, it makes the management of it just another level easier. And again, it's not just AVD, it's a whole ecosystem, the FS Logics piece, you can provision everything from it. And it's big fan of it.
I would like to see less registry changes when you're really digging in and making more of that kind of simplified. because there's a lot of times you can actually forget that these reg changes have happened, and before you know it, they're in your golden image, and you've kind of pushed it down a couple of phases. But yeah, I can't really think of anything to me that's massively missing.
Me
I'm
either,
sure
to
there
be
will be
fair.
something in the next few weeks. Yeah, I mean to me that just says how good that system is already. There's nothing, if you'd asked me 18 months ago when we provisioned it by PowerShell by 6-7 commands and that was it, it was on, I probably could have poked some holes in it.
Yeah.
But even the insights dashboard that comes as default, where you're pushing the agents out to the VMs to be able to monitor it, that's fantastic. That information is gold to a customer. We can say how long people are averagely connected for, what time are they starting up, when is the bulk of the load, which VMs are under load. Are we correct in our estimations that, that is the correct number of VMs that we need? The customers can see all those insights, and it's really, really good for them to be able to see it. Whereas, RDS and Citrix was a bit hidden away. It was either on or off. I could log in or I couldn't log in. We've got those insights to back up the decision making.
Excellent. That's been massively insightful, Chris. Thank you very much for joining us. That's kind of all kind of the questions I've got. We've obviously covered a lot of ground. Simon, is there anything else you wanted to?
No, that's fine for now. Thanks.
No, yeah, thank you very much for making the time. Really appreciate it. It's, like I said, been really insightful. It's always good to get another sort of get someone else's experience. And I think you mentioned it about you encourage your staff your engineers to do blogging, but you can't buy that experience that people have. That's massively invaluable. So thank you for sharing yours with us today. We're much appreciated.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So again, thank you for everyone who's watching. Please do give us a like, subscribe, and give us a comment if you have any questions for Chris. I'll put all Chris's socials on the description in the video, so feel free to reach out and obviously follow Chris. He doesn't slag off RDS anymore, but if people want to, I'm sure he can bring it back. So from me, thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Simon.
All right. Thanks, Shabazz.
See you later.
See you.